जी सतनाम श्री वाहिगुरु। अरदास सिख ओंकार श्री वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। वार श्री भगवती जी की पातशाही दसवीं प्रथम भगवती समर्कै गुरु नानक लई ते आए। फिर अंगद गुर ते अमरदास रामदास होई सहाय। अर्जन हर गोबिंद नो सिमरो श्री हर राय। श्री हर कृष्ण ध्याई है जिस डिठै सब दुख जाए। तेग बहादुर सिमरिया घर नानक आवे धाए। सब थाई होए सहाय। दसवां पातशाह श्री गुरु गोबिंद सिंह जी महाराज सब थाई होना जी सहाय। दसां पातशाहियां दी जोत श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी दे पाठ दर्शन दीदार दा ध्यान करके बोलो जी वाहिगुरु। पंजा प्यारियां चौहां साहिबजादियां 40 मुक्तियां हठियां जपियां तपियां जिन्हां नाम जपिया। वंड छकिया देख चलाई तेग वाही देख के अणबिठ कीता। तिन्हां प्यारियां सचियारियां दी कमाई दा ध्यान करके बोलो जी वाहिगुरु। जिन्हां ਸਿੰਘਾਂ ਸਿੰਘਣੀਆਂ ने धर्म हेत सीस दिते बंद बंद कटाए। खोपड़ियां लोहाइयां चरखड़ियां ते चढ़े। तन आरियां नाल चिराए गए। गुरुद्वारियां दी सेवा लई कुर्बानियां कीतियां। धर्म नहीं हारिया सिੱਖੀ केसां ਸਵਾਸਾਂ नाल निभाई। तिन्हां दी कमाई दा ध्यान करके बोलो जी वाहिगुरु। पंजां तख्तां सरबत गुरुद्वारियां दा ध्यान करके बोलो जी वाहिगुरु। प्रथमे सरबत खालसा जी की अरदास है जी। सरबत खालसा जी को वाहिगुरु वाहिगुरु वाहिगुरु। चितावे चितावन का सदका सर्व सुख होवे। जहाँ जहाँ खालसा जी साहिब तहाँ तहाँ रछिया रियायत। तेग तेग फतेह बिरद की पैज पंथ की जीत। श्री साहिब जी सहाय खालसा जी के बोल वाले बोलो जी वाहिगुरु। सिखां नूं सिੱਖੀ दान केस दान वहद दान विवेक दान विसाह दान भरोसा दान दाना सिरदान नाम दान। श्री ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤਸਰ जी दे दर्शन इशनान चौंकियां झंडे बुंगे जुगो जुग अटल धर्म का जयकार बोलो जी वाहिगुरु। हे निमाणियां दे माण निताणियां दे ताण निओटियां दी ओट निआसरियां दे आसरे। धन 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 साहिब श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी महाराज। आप जियां दे चरना कमलों विच अरदास बेनती जोदड़ी है सतगुरु जीओ। इस वक्त समूह संगतां वल्लों पंजां प्यारियां दी अगवाई हेठ आप जियां दे पावन स्वरूप सचखंड विचों दरबार हाल विखे ले जाण दी संगतां याचना करदियां हन। सतगुरु जीओ आप जी कृपा करो चलण दी आग्या बख्शिश करो। समूह संगत दे सीस ते मेहरां भरिया हथ रखना। नाम दी दात गुरसिੱਖੀ जीवन दी दात बख्शिश करनी। श्वास श्वास नाम जपाउणा। आप जी कृपा करो जी चलण दी आग्या बख्शिश करो। सही प्यारियां मेल मिलो जिन्हां मिलिया आप जी दा नाम चितावे। नानक नाम चढ़ी कला तेरे पानी भाई साहब तुम 5 मिनट सिमरन कर लो। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह। नाम वाहिगुरु सतनाम 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 वाहिगुरु ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ 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 ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
ਅੰਦਰ ਆ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਲੈ ਲਓ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ
ਕਿਧਰ ਦੀ ਸਿੱਧ ਇਧਰੋਂ ਦੀ ਸਿੱਧ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਕਲੌਕਵਾਈਜ਼ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਕਲੌਕਵਾਈਜ਼ ਹੈ ਇਧਰ ਹੀ ਪਾਣੀ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਇਧਰ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਇਧਰ ਕਰ ਲਓ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ ਉੱਪਰ ਦੀ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਚਲੋ ਠੀਕ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਦੋ ਅੱਗੇ ਇੱਕ ਬਚਾ ਛੋਟੇ ਬੱਚਾ ਪਿਆਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਧਰ ਲੈ ਬੱਚੇ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਜੀ ਅੱਗੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਚੱਲਣਗੇ ਫਿਰ ਪੰਜ ਪਿਆਰੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰ ਲਓ ਜੀ ਅੱਗੇ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਿਨਾਮ 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 ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਆਪ ਸਰਨ ਤੁਹਾਰੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ 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 ਜੈ ਜੈਕਾਰ
Why?
तेरी दास तुम मात पिता हम बारिक तेरे, तुम्हारी कृपा में सुख में कोई न जाने तुम्हारा अंत, ऊंचे तेरे ऊंचा भगवंत, सगल समग्री तुम्हारे सूत्रधारी, तुम देहो
पातशाही दसवीं प्रथम भगवती समर कै गुरु नानक लें ध्याए, फिर गुरते अमरदास रामदास होई सहाय, अर्जन हर गोबिंद नो सिमरो श्री हर राय, श्री हर कृष्ण ध्याई है है सब बुझाए, तेग बहादुर सिमरिया घर नानक आवे धाए, सावधानी होए सहाय। दसवां पातशाह श्री गुरु गोबिंद सिंह जी महाराज सावधानी होना जी सहाय, दसां पातशाहियां दी जोत श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी दे पाठ दर्शन दीदार का ध्यान करके बोलो जी वाहिगुरू। पंजा प्यारियां चौहां साहिबजादियां 40 मुक्तियां हटियां जपियां तपियां जिन्हां नाम जपिया, वण सकिया देख चलाई ते वाही देख ज्ञान मिट कीता, तिन्हां प्यारियां सत्यारियां की कमाई का ध्यान करके बोलो जी वाहिगुरू। जिन्हां सिन्हां सिन्नियां ने धर्म हेत सीस दिते, बन बन कटाए कोपियां वहाइयां चरपियां ते चढ़ियारियां नाल चिराए गए, गुरुद्वारियां दी सेवा लई कुर्बानियां कीतियां, धर्म ने हारिया सिੱਖੀ के सांस स्वासां नाल निभाई, तिन्हां दी कमाई दा ध्यान करके बोलो जी वाहिगुरू। पंजां तख्तां सरबत गुरुद्वारियां दा ध्यान करके बोलो जी वाहिगुरू। में सरबत खालसा जी की अरदास है जी, सरबत खालसा जी को वाहिगुरू 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 चितावे, चितावन का सदका सर्व सुख होवे, जहाँ खालसा जी साहिब कहाँ कहाँ रचिया आए, एक तेग बते बिरद की पैज पंथ की जीत, श्री साहिब जी सहाय, खालसा जी के बोल वाले बोलो जी वाहिगुरू। सिखां नूं सिੱਖੀ दान, केस दान, रहत दान, वेद दान, विसाह दान, भरोसा दान, दाना सरदान नाम दान, श्री अमृतसर जी के दर्शन इशनान चौंकियां झंडे बुंगे जुगो जुगा टाल धमका जयकार बोलो जी वाहिगुरू। सिखां दा मन नीवा मत उची मत पादे राखे आप वाहिगुरू, हे अकाल पुरख अपने पंथ दे सदा सहायता तार जीओ, श्री ननकाना साहिब के होर गुरुद्वारियां गुरधामां दे जिन्हां तो पंथ नूं छोड़िया गया है, तिन्हां दे खुले दर्शन दीदार ते सेवा संभालदा दान प्यारे खालसा जी नूं बख्शो, हे माणियां दे माण निताणियां दे ताण, न्योटियां दी ओट ने आसरियां दे आसरे, गुरु गरीब निवाज पतित पावन भगत बचन कृपा निधान प्रजामी, प्रतख गुरगद्दी ते विराजमान दसां पातशाहियां दी जागदी जोत जुगो जुग अटल, चवर छत्र तखत दे मालक धन 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 साहिब श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी महाराज, आप जी का कुर्बान कोट शुकराना है जो आप जी अपने सुख आसन स्थान तो चल के अपने सोहने दरबार के विच आके आप जी ने संतां नूं दर्शन बख्शे हैं सतगुरु जीओ, आप जी का कुर्बान कोट शुकराना है सतगुरु पंजां प्यारियां दी अगवाई हेठ आप दरबार हाल विखे पहुंचे हो सतगुरु जीओ, इस दरबार हाल की उसारी के कार्य आप जी की कृपा सदका निर्विघ्नता से संपूर्ण होया है, जिन्हां संतां ने इस कार्य में तन मन धन दे नाल सेवा निभाई है सतगुरु जीओ, तिन्हां दे खजाने भरपूर करने, काल कंटक दूर करने, नाम दी दात गुरसिੱਖੀ जीवन दी दात बख्शिश करने, समूह संतां दे सीस ते मेहरा भरिया हथ रखना, काम क्रोध लोभ मोह हंकार तो बचाउणा, अमृत वेले दे जागने नाम जपण दी समर्था ते कारोबारां विच बरकतां करने, दुखां कलेशां विघ्नां दे नाश करने, सुखां दे प्रकाश करने, मन दियां शुभ मनोभावनावां गुरमत अनुसार संपूर्ण करनियां, देशां प्रदेशां च अंग संग सहाय होकर रखा करनी, जगत जलंदा रख लै अपनी कृपा धार, जित द्वारा उबरै तितै लिहो वार, संसार विच सुख शांति वरताउणी सतगुरु जीओ कृपा करो जी, इस वक्त संतां नूं खुले दर्शन दीदारे बख्श के प्रकाशमान होकर निहाल करो, ਹੁਕਮਨਾਮੇ ਦੀ ਦਾਤ ਬਖਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰੋ। ਸਹੀ ਪਿਆਰਿਆਂ ਮੇਰ ਮੇਲੋ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਚਿਤਾਵੇ। ਨਾਨਕ ਨਾਮ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਤੇਰੇ ਭਾਣੇ ਸਰਬੱਤ ਦਾ ਭਲਾ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਦੁਬਰਾ ਆਗਿਆ ਭਈ ਅਕਾਲ ਕੀ ਤਬੈ ਚਲਾਇਓ ਪੰਥ। ਸਤ ਸਿੱਖਣ ਕੋ ਹੁਕਮ ਹੈ ਗੁਰੂ ਮਾਨਿਓ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ। ਗੁਰੂ ਗ੍ਰੰਥ ਜੀ ਮਾਨਿਓ ਪ੍ਰਗਟ ਗੁਰਾਂ ਕੀ ਦੇ। ਜੋ ਪ੍ਰਭ ਕੋ ਮਿਲ ਬੋਝ ਹੈ ਖੋਜ ਸ਼ਬਦ ਮੈਂ ਲੈ। ਰਾਜ ਕਰੇਗਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਕੀ ਰਹੇ ਨ ਕੋਇ। ਵਾਰ ਹੋਏ ਸਭ ਮਿਲेंगे ਭਜੇ ਸ਼ਰਨ ਜੋ ਹੋਏ। ਵਾਰ ਹੋਏ ਸਭ ਮਿਲेंगे ਭਜੇ ਸ਼ਰਨ ਜੋ ਹੋਏ। ਬੋਲੇ ਸੋ ਨਿਹਾਲ। ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ। 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 ਬੋਲੇ ਸੋ ਨਿਹਾਲ। ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ। ਬੋਲੇ ਸੋ ਨਿਹਾਲ। ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ। ਸਾਧਨ ਕੀ ਕੋਈ ਹਰਿਆਵਲੀ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਬੈਠਾ ਏ। ਤੇ ਦੰਤ ਪਾਏ ਹਰਿਆਵਲੀ ਜਿਨੀ ਮੇਰਾ ਸਤਿਗੁਰ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜਾਏ। ਬਾਣੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਹੈ ਬਾਣੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਾਣੀ ਅੰਮ੍ਰਿਤ ਸਾਰੇ। ਬਾਣੀ ਕਹੈ ਸੇਵਕ ਜਨ ਮਾਨੈ ਪਰ ਤਤ ਗੁਰੂ ਨਿਸਤਾਰੇ। ਹਉ ਆਇਆ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਚੱਲ ਕੇ ਮੈਂ ਤਪੀ ਤੋ ਸ਼ਰਨਾਏ ਜੀਓ। ਮੈਂ ਆਸਾ ਰੱਖੀ ਚਿਤ ਮੈਂ ਮੇਰਾ ਸਭੋ ਦੁੱਖ ਗਵਾਏ ਜੀਓ। ਫਿਰਤ ਫਿਰਤ ਪ੍ਰਭ ਆਇਆ ਆਇਆ ਤੋ ਸਰਨਾਏ। ਨਾਨਕ ਕੀ ਪ੍ਰਭ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਭਗਤੀ ਲਾਏ। ਸੋ ਕੋ ਟਲ ਗੁਰ ਸੇਵੀਐ ਅਹਨਸ ਸਹਿਜ ਸੁਭਾਏ। ਦਰਸ਼ਨ ਪਰਸੈ ਗੁਰੂ ਕੈ ਜਨਮ ਮਰਨ ਦੁਖ ਜਾਏ। ਹੋਵੇ ਸੁਤ ਕਸਮ ਦੀ ਨੂਰ ਆਸੋਂ ਪੁਰਸੋਂ ਚਟੀਐ। ਤੁਧ ਡਿਠੇ ਸੱਚੇ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਮਲ ਜਨਮ ਜਨਮ ਦੀ ਕੱਟੀਐ। ਤੁਧ ਡਿਠੇ ਸੱਚੇ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹ ਮਲ ਜਨਮ ਜਨਮ ਦੀ ਕੱਟੀਐ। ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜੀ। ਸ਼ਲੋਕ ਮਹਲਾ ਤੀਜਾ। ਮਾਇਆ ਮਮਤਾ ਮੋਹਣੀ ਜਿਣ ਵਿਣ ਦੰਤਾ ਜਗ ਖਾਇਆ। ਮਨ ਮੁਖ ਖਾਦੇ ਗੁਰਮੁਖ ਉਬਰੇ ਜਿਨੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਮ ਚਿਤ ਲਾਇਆ। ਮਾਇਆ ਮਮਤਾ ਮੋਹਣੀ ਜਿਣ ਵਿਣ ਦੰਤਾ ਜਗ ਖਾਇਆ। मुख खादे गुरमुख उबरे, जिन्नी सच नाम चित लाया। बिन नामै जग कमला फिरै, गुरमुख नदरी आया। धंधा करत्या निफल जन्म गवाया, सुख दाता मन ना वसाया। नानक नाम तिना को मिलिया, जिनको तुर लिख पाया। महला तीजा, घर ही में अमृत भरपूर है, मन मुखा साधना पाया। ज्यों कस्तूरी मिर्ग ना जाने, प्रमदा भरम बुलाया। अमृत तज बिक संग है, करते आप खुआया। गुरमुख विरले सोजी पई, तिना अंदर ब्रह्म दिखाया। तन मन शीतल होया, रसना हर साध आया। शब्दे ही नाम उपजै, शब्दे मेल मिलाया। बिन शब्द सब जग बौराना, बिरथा जन्म गवाया। अमृत एको शब्द है, नानक गुरमुख पाया। पौड़ी सो हर पुरख अगम है, कहो कित विद पाइय। तिस रूप नारिक अदृश्य कहो, जन क्यों ध्याइय। निरंकार निरंजन हर अगम, क्या कह गुण गाइय। जिसे आप बुझाए आप, सो हर मार्ग पाइय। गुर पूरै वे खालिया, गुर सेवा पाइय। जिसे आप बुझाए आप, सो हर मार्ग पाइय। गुर पूरै वे खालिया, गुर सेवा पाइय। वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ,
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਭਾਗੀ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ ਸਵਾਰੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੇਸ਼ੱਕ ਰਾਜਮਾਨ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ। ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਵਧਾਈ ਹੋਵੇ ਅਤੇ ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰ ਦੀਆਂ ਖੁਸ਼ੀਆਂ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਕਰੋ। ਅਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰਸ਼ਾਦ ਵਰਤੇਗਾ। ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਰੈਗੂਲਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕਿ ਆਸਾ ਕੀ ਬਾਤ ਦਾ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਹੋਏਗਾ। ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਭਾਈ ਰਮਨਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਔਰ ਭਾਈ ਮਨੋਹਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਕੀਰਤਨ ਕਰਨਗੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਆਖਰ ਨੂੰ। ਅਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਇਨਫੋਰਮ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਬਾਹਰ ਅੱਜ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਚੜ੍ਹਾਇਆ ਜਾਏਗਾ। ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਰਿਕੁਐਸਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਪਹੁੰਚੋ। ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਠੰਡ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਬਾਹਰ ਤੇ ਅੰਦਰ ਆ ਕੇ ਲਾਬੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਖੜੇ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ, ਪਰ ਉੱਥੇ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਚੜ੍ਹੇਗਾ 10:30 ਵਜੇ ਦੇ ਕੋਲ। ਔਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੰਦਰ ਆ ਕੇ ਬ੍ਰੈਕਫਾਸਟ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਵੀ ਖਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਔਰ ਉਸ ਆਪਣੇ ਖੁਸ਼ੀਆਂ ਮਾਣੋ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ, ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ,
ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ, ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ,
ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ, ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ,
ਸਤਨਾਮ
ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਨਾਮ
ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
ਮਾਨਯੋਗ ਸੰਗਤ ਜੀ ਇੱਕ ਹੋਰ ਅਨਾਉਂਸਮੈਂਟ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੁਣੇ ਹੀ ਕਰ ਲਈਏ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਪੰਜ ਪਿਆਰੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਔਰ ਇਹ ਅਪਰੋਪਰੀਏਟ ਟਾਈਮ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਹੁਣੇ ਹੀ ਕਰੀਏ ਤੇ ਪਲੀਜ਼ ਬਾਹਰ ਜਾਂ ਲਾਬੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਜਾਓ ਤੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਉੱਤੇ ਖੜੇ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਦੇ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਕਰੀਏ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
You have to shut it off, go to end session, and then start again. And then a different mode.
Yeah.
Are we ready to go? Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having us here today. I'm sorry.
Stealing his thunder. Oh, they're turning the mic on.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I want to thank everybody to taking the time to come here. And I just want to quickly introduce our panel of speakers. So we have the first one, Honorable Joe Barone, who's a 35th District Court Judge, and then Judge Michael Giroux, also from 35th District, and Attorney Mike Giroux, who's a private attorney. So I'll turn it over to them without any delay.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having us. We're glad to be here. The food was absolutely delicious. My name's Mike Giroux. I work for you. I'm a 35th District Court Judge. 35th District Court is a 74 square mile district, 3 townships, Plymouth, Canton, and Northville, and the 2 cities, Plymouth and Northville. I'm an old guy. I've been a judge for 24 years. I'm in my last term, and I'm very pleased to be here. I'm going to give you a quick nutshell about where our laws come from and explain that we have a federal court system and a state court system. Then I'm going to turn it over to my bench mate, Judge Barone, who's a lot smarter than I am. He's our newest judge. And judges, however, we're going to do question and answer afterwards. We cannot give legal advice ethically. That's why Miles is here. Miles is my son, very bright, up-and-coming criminal defense attorney, and he can advise you of what your rights are and what your responsibilities are should you run into a situation with the police or with ICE or anyone like that. So very quickly, where do our laws come from? We have our big laws, the constitutions. We have a federal constitution and a state constitution. They're big, vague laws, and they're intentionally vague. They're intentionally vague so they stand the test of time. The U.S. Constitution has only been amended in our history every 20, 25 years or so. Michigan has a constitution that was enacted in 1963. As state court judges, we have to abide by both constitutions. Finer delineations of the law are found in the statutes and then in local ordinances like townships and cities. So statutes are enacted by the legislature. They're signed by the executive. They would be the president in the federal system. It would be the governor in the state system. Judges, well, we're not supposed to make law. We don't make law. And we're in a different branch of government. Those are finer delineations of the law. Things like immigration laws, they have nothing to do with me. I'm in the state court system. I am not an immigration judge. I do nothing to enforce laws. Then you have case laws. Below that, we borrowed from the British. India has a history with the British as well. There's a civil law system, and then there's the British law system. The British law system has something called stare decisis, where if you as a citizen do your due diligence, you should be able to act in a way that complies with the law. If I drive down the road, I look at a speed limit sign, I know what the speed limit is, that sort of thing. The highest courts issue written opinions. Now, I'll ignore the federal court system right now because I'm part of the state court system. The highest court in the state of Michigan is the Michigan Supreme Court. They have 7 justices. They sit in one panel. They hear no trials whatsoever. They hear discretionary appeals from the lower courts. They issue written opinions which the lower courts are supposed to follow. That way it makes our laws more predictable. The French in part of Louisiana have a civil system where judges have much more discretion, where they can do what they think is fair in any given situation. That sounds like a good idea, but it's less predictable. We follow stare decisis. So if the Michigan Supreme Court issues a decision, the lower courts have to follow it. That's where lawyers make their money. They're going to say, well, of course that's the law, Your Honor. However, this case is different because of this and this and this. Sometimes they're right. In Michigan, below the Michigan Supreme Court, you have the Michigan Court of Appeals. There's 28 Michigan Court of Appeals judges. They sit in panels of 3 from different regions in the state. They rotate from time to time. Again, they hear no trials whatsoever. They hear appeals of right from the circuit court and discretionary appeals that come up from us lowly district court judges. Not that we ever make a bad decision or anything, but they issue 2 types of written opinions, published and unpublished. Published, the lower courts have to follow if they're on point. Unpublished, we can look at that opinion for guidance on the issue so that we all try to make the right decisions. And we can look at that for guidance and say, well, I like the rationale. I understand how they applied the law. Yes, I think that's good law to follow. But I don't have to do so. Below that, you have, yes, sir.
Give an example.
An example. Oh, boy. Let's say an example of a case that I would have to follow or not follow.
I mean, I think search issues are typically like that. Sometimes you'll have an issue where a search is so like fact specific to why a search violated the Fourth Amendment that a Court of Appeals might want to say, these facts are so unique, we don't want to tie judges' hands to it because the facts are so unique about this case, but cases that aren't as unique fact-wise, that where they're...
No, that's a good explanation.
Search.
Searches.
Searches or arrests, you know.
Searches and arrests, those sorts of things. And some of those are very fact-specific. Typically, the Court of Appeals, I believe, and you clerked at the Court of Appeals, I think they decide which ones are going to be published and which ones are not going to be published, whether it has broader application. Is that correct? If it's something that might have a narrow application where the litigants or the defendant in a criminal case is entitled to a decision, they may make a decision but say, this doesn't really apply to this and this and this and all these other counties. So I think that would be it. The highest trial level courts in the state of Michigan are parallel courts. You have the circuit court, you have the probate court. Probate court, you hear all sorts of advertising, oh, you have to avoid probate court. But probate court is designed to look out for people that can't look out for themselves. Dead people's estates, minors, people that are under 18, and legally incapacitated adults. There's a lot of people that will prey on all of those people, and they have a system set up to protect those classes of people. Circuit court has 3 divisions: family, civil, and criminal. Criminal, they hear felony cases. There's 2 types of crimes. The more serious being felonies, the less serious are misdemeanors. A felony is anything in Michigan. We don't have a death penalty under Michigan state law. The last time somebody was put to death in Michigan was under federal law, I think in the 40s or something, long, long ago. But a felony is a case that is punishable by at least 1 year in prison up to life in prison. A misdemeanor, theoretically, can be punishable by anywhere up to 1 year in the county jail. Now, most misdemeanors are 93-day maximum offenses. 93 days or a $500 fine. If you're charged with a 93-day offense, you must be fingerprinted and you're entered into a database. If you're exonerated or the case is dismissed, you can get an order to have your biometrics and your fingerprints destroyed. So, the circuit court handles felony trials. They also have a civil division where you sue someone for a lot of money. Anything over $25,000 in damages, or if you're seeking equitable relief. That is, say an injunctive order, or if you want the court to order someone to do something or refrain from doing something. A personal protection order. Somebody's being beaten up, or maybe a spouse is beaten up by an ex-husband or something like that. You would get a personal protection order, and that would give the police probable cause to arrest that person if they show up anywhere near them. So that's an equitable power. Us as district court judges, we have very few equitable powers. We have legal powers only for the most part. You have the family court and circuit court. That division is divorce, custody, visitation, paternity, child support, all those sorts of things. We're in the district court though, and we handle everything from a parking ticket to a murder case. I've been a judge 24 years. I was on a national TV show years ago. We had a beheading case in Canton, and it was in all the national shows. If any crime occurs anywhere in our district, 74 square miles, any of the townships of Plymouth, Canton, or Northville City, or Plymouth City, the case starts in our court. We handle misdemeanors from start to finish. I think I'll hand it off to Joe and let you talk about what we do at the district court. Yeah. And then Miles will give you legal advice, and particularly as to stops with the police, interactions with ICE, what your rights and responsibilities are. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. I have to leave. I'm sorry.
You gotta watch the Pistons play.
My girlfriend bought very expensive tickets to this game, so I need to get them.
All right, bring us a win.
Thank you so much.
Bring us a win there, Mike.
Take care. Thank you.
That's the only reason we can let you
Thank you, Ben.
I hope so. I hope those are.
I don't have a card with me.
Well, thank you so much for the invite.
Thank you, sir.
To the entire. I didn't realize we were getting fed too, so that was a pleasant surprise, and and now I don't have to get lunch. So thank you. And just a quick introduction of myself. I am Judge Joe Barone. Mike Drew is my benchmate, and of course he did a brief introduction with Miles Giroux, an excellent lawyer. And as Mike had indicated, as Judge Drew had indicated, I can't really give legal advice, so I'm going to give an overview, and then immigration issues or things that you're thinking maybe specific questions, then I'll let Miles kind of handle it. But we're all on the same page. I just want to give you a brief history of maybe what we do at the 35th District Court, and we are your local court. I just got elected to the bench in 2024, so I am new to the bench, bringing new energy, but I'm not so new that I'm still in my 50s now, so it sneaks up on you. But I love the job. I don't know, some of you may have voted for me, maybe you didn't, I don't know. Either way, but our district is Plymouth, Canton, and Northville. So it's really the 5 communities. It's Plymouth City, Plymouth Township. We're the township here, right? Plymouth Township? Or are we Northville?
No, you're
Plymouth, that's right. Plymouth Township. And then we have Northville City and Northville Township, and then we have Canton Township. Canton Township makes up the large proportion, the large majority of our cases, and population-wise as well. So, but I've raised my family here. I've been here for a long time. My kids it's hard to believe, they were little when I started practicing law, and now one's in law school in Chicago, wow, and the other one's a senior at Michigan State, so it's just like that. It's like blink of an eye. I kind of look back and I go, and I remember when Miles was a little guy, and now he's a seasoned lawyer. So, but as Mike briefly indicated a little bit, the district, we are your community court. This is the court that you go to. We're right down the road, actually. Just go right down. It's the court where the softball diamonds are. So there's 3 judges. You had 2 of them today. There's another Judge Plakas when I actually ran against Judge Plakas for an open seat in 2008, and I lost by that much. I give him a little nudge here and there, saying I think I might have beat you, but no, he beat me fair and square. So it was, but I had an opportunity. I really didn't plan on running for a judge again until we had a Judge Lowe, Ron Lowe, retired, and when he retired, he announced his retirement, and I said, I never said never. I told my clients I never say never, but I didn't really plan for it. But then it arose, and I took the opportunity, and I ran for it, and I was fortunate enough to win. So, but the cases that we handle, as Judge Drew had indicated, are the civil cases. If you're suing somebody for money, $25,000 and less. So we handle those on 3-week rotation. So every 3rd week, like this past week was my civil rotation. And so they're not the large dollar amounts. Those are usually handled in the circuit court in downtown Detroit. But neighborhood disputes, small claims cases, all of those come before us on 3-week rotations. And then as Judge Drew had indicated, we also do the start of felony cases. So sometimes we hear it where somebody will say, well, you're a district judge, you're not handling the trial. We don't necessarily handle the trial, but the first appearance in court for a person that is charged with a felony would be our particular court. So our job at that particular time is to determine whether there's probable cause, and that's a legal standard, and it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, which some people might, that's how you convict people, but it's that is the legal standard to actually find someone guilty. Probable cause is a lower standard, but the lower standard, if the prosecutor proves that this person, there's probable cause to believe that this person committed the crime that was alleged, then we would bind that over. It's what we call bind it over to the circuit court, and that's where it would go down to the trial track, and so on and so forth. So that's a lot of, and all of the misdemeanor cases, Mike had mentioned a year or less in jail, or these are maximum penalties, 93 days in jail. Most of the misdemeanors are 93-day misdemeanors, so anything that's, you can, the drinking and driving offenses, these simple assault and batteries, domestic assaults, simple, maybe drug possessions. A lot of those are 93 days or less, and those all come to us, and they don't go downtown. So kind of they've decriminalized a lot these days. So whereas it used to be back in the day, I think we would have a minor, somebody that was below 21, and they would get caught with, alcohol. That used to be a criminal case. But they've decriminalized that and they've made it a civil infraction now. So there's been a lot of that, including marijuana as well, with the legalization of marijuana. There's a lot of changes. So we don't necessarily see as many cases. We see a lot of driving offenses, those types of things. So anything 93 days and less, we're handling or we're seeing. So hope you mind, I have my cheat sheet. Might get up here without it, but I'd like to have a little cheat sheet, so don't rely on it.
I do the same.
Yeah. Well, you have a lot of material, but the mission from our court, the 35th District Court, and like I said, this isn't. I don't believe this is any one of the individual judges' court. This is your court. That is your court. So you are welcome to come into that court. You're always welcome to come into the courtroom that I am sitting in, and that's what people I think sometimes forget. This is not the judge's court. You fall into that. Come into my courtroom because you're trying to just give them the location, but that's not in fact true. It's the people's court, and that is really the people's court, as opposed to maybe the circuit court or somewhere downtown. So, and then part of the mission that we have, every person that comes before us, and I know that all three of the judges there have the same philosophy. Everyone should be treated with fairness, impartiality, and respect. No matter what you look like, no matter where you came from, no matter what your sexual orientation, any of the protected classes, and really everybody is going to be treated fairly and equally in our courtroom. And that's one thing that I made a point to stress, and I think I've stressed that to our staff and our security, and that is very, very important because people don't feel comfortable when they go into court a lot of times. It's a place that they don't necessarily they don't go a lot, and they feel that they might be treated unfairly, and particularly, if you are in a protected class, or you have, or you're from a region that, perhaps you're new here, you're new to the country, you feel you should, this is an open, it's what makes our country one of the greatest in the world, is this impartiality and this fairness, and there's no other place that we should be exemplifying that than the courtroom. And that's what I think we're doing locally, and as long as I'm there, I'm going to make sure that we continue down that path. How many people here are from so we're here to talk about immigration. How many people are here are from families of, or children are from immigrants? There's a lot, right? That is what this country is based upon. That's the American dream right there. That's how we established that, and I think that we can't forget that, particularly in times like now, right? It is so important. We have we have the best country, as I said, the best country in the world, and it was all built on people coming here to our country. So, and that's something that we can't forget. Yeah.
A lot of debate going on lately in the country about who is an immigrant.
You're right.
I had to stand in the line in India for 5 years for me to get my green card, pay my price. I had to bring a bond. I want to be public charge. Everything. I had to go through all the monkey work. I am an immigrant. Now, those guys who cross the border illegally, without anything, and then, they come here. Now, I can understand that part because they came here now. But then they go to the courts, and courts give them the protection of law. Now, there was a case in England way back where a boat of the immigrant tried to come and came across the Indian Channel, and they won't let them come in. And they appealed, and they went to the House of Viceroy, whatever big, like Supreme Court, and they told them, you guys have no right to appeal under the British law because you have not been even admitted in England. What right you got
Yeah.
Just because you come illegally,
Yeah.
you come here, now you want to challenge
Yeah.
and be governed with British law, you're not British.
Yeah.
Now why can't we in this country
Yeah.
have seen the common sense approach?
Yeah, that's what we're. I think there's a middle ground, right?
Well, I just wonder how the courts.
Well, then, you know, I'm kind of getting into, and I'll let Miles get into some of the strategic tactics and what some like talking about some. But I believe that there's a middle ground in here. It doesn't have to be heavy-handed and one-sided, and there is a middle ground, and just the recognition that, you know, immigrants are a material part of our country. It's why we are the country we are, is because we have people that have immigrated here. So I'll let Miles get into a little bit of some of the procedure about maybe some of that. But let's see, what else did I want to talk about? So immigration laws are primarily federal. They're federal laws. So that's one thing that Judge Drew had indicated. You know, we're state judges. We're state employees, state of Michigan employees, and so none of these cases, none of the immigration cases would come before us. These are all going to be in front of a federal court handled by the Department of Homeland Security. So the 35th District Court has no say whatsoever, including any state court does not participate in any deportation. You know, we had a case, and we talked about this earlier when we were having lunch, and it was we had a case. I believe what happened was a mistaken identity case. ICE did show up at our court, and they arrested the wrong individual. Turned out to be a U.S. citizen. The person that they were with was the person that they were looking for, but they recognized they screwed it. It did make the news, but as far as I know, they have been in our building, but we have no advance knowledge. The prosecutors don't know about it. The judges surely don't know about it, and I know that the attorneys would not know about it. They are operating completely independently of, you know, they may have some, as far as I know, the local police departments have no coordinated efforts with ICE. And I can certainly say we want to nobody should have any fear when they're going into a courthouse and taking care of the government business. You know, that is something that they should not have. They shouldn't have a fear that they're going to show up in court. I mean, it kind of defeats the purpose. We want people to show up in court and handle their affairs. And if they're afraid they have other issues, including immigration, you know, I believe it completely is detrimental to the purpose of the courthouse in general. But rest assured that we don't operate in any coordination with the courts, with any type of federal agency. So there are certain plea agreements that we enter into. So if someone is charged with a crime, we have something called a delayed sentence. They might enter a guilty plea to a certain crime. That crime would, if they get through a probationary period, would ultimately be dismissed. So it would show up as a dismissal. That's a delayed sentence statute. We have a couple other statutes, really, domestic assault cases, drug cases, certain crimes that are committed with people that are young adults or young kids. We have a series of laws that say, you know what, we understand, we don't want to mar your record by making this a conviction. So get through this probationary period, and ultimately this matter is going to be dismissed. So from all state court perspectives, it shows up as a dismissal. But it's a little bit different when you're dealing with federal immigration laws, because they don't care what the state says. They say this shows up as a dismissal, that's for your state laws. So on your record it would show up as a dismissal, but the federal immigration laws might say, that's still a conviction for immigration purposes. So those are important distinctions, just because the state law, and again, any defense attorney, a qualified defense attorney should be able to signal these things. Oh, wait a minute, we better take a second look at it. And again, our prosecutors are very, very mindful about immigration issues. So the people that have maybe there might be some issues that need to be addressed. The prosecutor may grant adjournments. For example, some people don't have a valid driver's license. Certain plea agreements, if they don't have a valid driver's license, will show up. It will leave the courthouse, and it'll be it could be a trigger for an immigration deportation case. So prosecutors are not circumventing, including the judges are not circumventing, but there are certain pleas that don't have the same consequences as another conviction. So that's why it's real important to get someone that knows the criminal justice system and is familiar with the immigration laws if you're ever involved into that.
And I should butt in and say the judges at 35th District Court in particular are very good about advising people that there could be immigration consequences from what's going on, but not specifically asking if somebody is an immigrant or not, where it would make a record if somebody does have maybe an undocumented status. They're not making them put that on the record where it's going to be something that immigration officials could look for. The judges just advise them, and then they don't, like Joe said, or Judge Barone said, they don't have any coordinated efforts. But I wanted to mention that that's something your court's particularly good about.
And that's one of, I've said, I don't know how many times today, you understand that this plea agreement could have immigration consequences such as deportation, exclusion from readmission if you left the United States and tried to come back, or denial of rights to naturalize. And those are standard. That's what I say in every case. So every
they don't
case
force the person to say, are you an immigrant or not?
And I want to just make sure that they're informed, that they know that entering a plea agreement could show up on a federal, it could have immigration consequences aside from what they're doing today. Because they might say, the prosecutor said I'm only going to do this. And that might be true, but the federal immigration system might have a different take on it. Yeah, go ahead.
What about the expunged case?
So you mean sealing the record after getting it expunged?
Right.
Getting it expunged? Yeah, I mean, again, state level expungements, right? So, the federal, if there's an expungement that happened, it might have different effects. And I'll leave it to Miles to address it, but from the state perspective, that case goes away. But the federal immigration system may have a different take on it.
And one of the things with expungements too is while it deletes any public record of the interaction, there's still a non-public record that's kept, and typically national, federal level agencies are going to be able to get access to non-public records. But again, it's not something where I'm aware of any state courts sending them to the federal agencies, but if those federal agencies wanted to seek it out, there still would be a non-public record that they would be able to access because of their status as a federal government agency.
Yeah, thank you. And some of the other avenues that we recognize, Judge Giroux has hit on it. We do have Zoom court proceedings. So a lot of times people say, I just don't feel comfortable coming into the court in certain circumstances. We're not going to make a record. The purpose for the Zoom would be that, but we accommodate people that are, let's just say, if they live out of state or if they have child care issues. There are other issues, so we have Zoom court proceedings, and they're oftentimes they're authorized either through their defense counsel or by request. So, again, and I know I'm probably running a little long, but I just wanted to, emphasize that the communities like ours, it is immigrants, people that have immigrated here, have the pillars of our community. And I'm hopeful that my colleagues, I know everybody on this panel feels the same way. I'm hopeful that that the rest of the elected officials and the rest of the government branches all recognize that and treat everybody fairly and with dignity. Yeah, go ahead.
I think just expanding on that. So, do the judges across the state, like we are from Ann Arbor, so do they meet and have sort of a consensus meeting about?
As far as immigration issues?
No, as in how do
it,
right? So this is how we're going to address it. We're not going to raise it.
Yeah, we will have. They'll address it. So the judges, we go to an annual conference once a year. We have the District Judges Association conference coming up, and that will be a topic, how things are handled. From what I've seen, pretty much every judge that I interact with kind of has the same philosophy on this. So I don't think it's now I'm not saying there might be a somebody that we don't know that's handling things a little bit differently. You might see them on YouTube or something like that, you know, but trying to make a name. But I think for the most part, everybody feels, you know, kind of the same way. And, you know, again, the law's blind. You know, we have the scales of justice. The law should be blind. It should be colorblind. It should, you know, everybody, no matter what, should be treated fairly. And I just wanted to do a little bit of a small part to just emphasize that your court is your community court. No judges there. You're always welcome. You're always welcome into the courthouse there and coming up and seeing us. And again, I thank you so much for the invite, and I thank you for being fed too. I'll turn it over to my colleague Miles. Yes.
What is your opinion of Donald Trump?
I am going to respectfully decline to answer that. You know, here's the thing.
Judges are nonpartisan.
Yeah, we're elected as nonpartisan, so they don't even allow us to give a partisan opinion. I can't endorse one way or another. I couldn't say yes or no. So it's kind of good, it's kind of bad. So I can keep it. We can keep it. So I appreciate the question, though. Good try. Go ahead, Miles. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you again, everyone.
So there's some tea and water available here. Anybody wants to help themselves for that? Yeah.
Okay, and thank you everyone for the opportunity for me to speak here. Like Judge had already said, my name is Miles Giroux. I grew up in Plymouth, Canton. I grew up in the Catholic faith. I went to All Saints Catholic School, and I put that out there just because I know houses of worship, places of faith have a very important role in our communities for looking out for people that can't look out for themselves, those in need and the vulnerable. And I see that you all are doing that here, and I greatly appreciate that. I have so many clients that are able to reach out to houses of worship and faith for help that they need, maybe with making rent money, food for their children. Houses like this just have such an integral part of holding our community together and creating public safety. I went to Plymouth High School, and one of the reasons I like this area so much is the diversity. In my high school friend group, I had a good friend that was Indian and Pakistani, and I realized how unique that was to being here in Plymouth, Canton, Michigan, because there's many places in the world where there would be barriers to those two becoming friends. I went to Eastern Michigan for undergraduate and then Toledo for law school. And in my background, before becoming a criminal defense lawyer, I interned at the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, and then I also worked for the Michigan Court of Appeals as an intern. I ultimately became passionate about criminal defense because we are the constitutional check and balance on the state's police power. We get a chance to make sure that the government and police officers are following the law. We have an important role in holding them accountable. And also, I occasionally get to help people that are off, maybe making some poor decisions in their life, and get them into maybe treatment, programming that allows them to ultimately start making better decisions, and then bring that forward into the court case to get them good and favorable treatment based on their situation and the defenses that I'm able to drum up. But I know you're not here so much to listen to me talk about myself. I put that out there to say I'm not an immigration attorney, and the advice that I'm giving today, I hope it would give people the tools that they need where if they come into contact with some member of law enforcement or federal immigration enforcement, that they're able to assert their rights in that situation and ultimately get to an immigration lawyer that can then assert your rights in the more formal court proceedings. So with that being said, with us being in Michigan and being so close to the border, in Michigan you can run into two different types of federal immigration enforcement. Either ICE, as they've been making a lot of the news, but we also have Customs and Border Protection because they can, while they're mostly limited to checkpoints, they do roving patrols and that sort of thing. With Michigan being within the 100-mile barrier, they do have jurisdiction in pretty much the entire state. And the reason I'm able to advise on this, even though I don't do immigration, is because the way our Constitution works, if you are on U.S. soil, your 4th and 5th Amendment rights, which are your rights that come into force the most when you come into contact with law enforcement, apply to everybody. Whether you're a citizen, not a citizen, if you're on U.S. soil, your 4th and 5th Amendment rights apply. And again, the 4th Amendment is going to be your right against unreasonable searches and seizures. That's going to be a lot of your privacy rights. Where your 5th Amendment is where your right to remain silent during police questioning and have an attorney, if it's criminal in nature, present And if it's the questioning is immigration related, you don't necessarily have a right to have an appointed attorney there, but you certainly have a right to ask for an attorney to be present and be afforded an opportunity to get an attorney of your own, whether that be retained or going to some legal aid group. And a lot of the information that I got today is from the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center based out of Ann Arbor. They're doing tremendous work out there. They work with the ACLU on a lot of these issues. They're certainly a prominent group. I will be leaving here one of their packets for preparing your family for immigration enforcement. God forbid that should something come up, they have some helpful documents on how you can kind of compile all of your important documents, your passports, financial records, marriage, birth certificates, and have those all in one central place. So God forbid if there is someone in your family does come in contact with immigration enforcement and you need to get that information, that there's kind of a central plan already in place where, whoever is responsible at the household knows how to access those documents and ultimately get that information to you and the attorney in that situation so they can show connections to the community, your status, all those sort of things. And if you're not a full citizen, good to have the A number in there. So before talking about what to do in a law enforcement encounter, I think it's important to maybe start with some things not to do. And first I would say, don't lie. You have a right to remain silent, and if you don't have a good answer, it's always better to just be silent than to go out and put forward a lie. Because if you either lie, provide false documents, like let's say, someone's maybe undocumented and they try to pass something along as a real document, you may run into issues of obstructing justice, and all of a sudden the immigration issue also becomes criminalized. So you don't want to lie, provide false documents. On that same kind of thinking, if you're free to leave, or if you're not sure whether you're free to leave, you certainly don't want to run away. You want to, if you're free to leave or you're not sure, you want to slowly walk away so they can't look at any quick movements as being evasive or maybe even threatening to an officer's safety. Because a lot of times if people are running away, that can become the justification for officers maybe using some heavy-handed tactics that we wouldn't want to see anyone have to be subjected to. Again, similar to asserting your right to silence and not lying, don't argue. If you get to a point where you're feeling that the conversation isn't becoming productive, the best thing to always say is, I think I'd like an attorney present for any questioning. This is my attorney. Can I have a chance to call them? And related on that, I made about 50 of these. I don't know that I'll have enough for everybody here at the congregation, but the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center puts out these Know Your Right cards, and they're really, really nice for two reasons. If you're somebody that's maybe not comfortable speaking with law enforcement because it's intimidating, or maybe English isn't your first language, the nice part about these cards is it has that you're asserting your right to silence. It puts in writing for an officer in English all of the rights that you would want to assert in that moment. And it also gives you a spot where you can list an attorney's name that you'd like them to contact. And if English is not your first language, and down here you can put whatever your first language is. So then that also gives you some additional protections where if they try to get you to sign anything that's maybe in English and you've notified them that English isn't your first language, that may provide defenses. But ultimately, if anything's presented to you for signature, that is a very, very clear sign that you need to be asking for an attorney. I would not sign any document given to you, whether it be local law enforcement, federal law enforcement, immigration officials. If they're asking for your signature, that's time to call an attorney. And if you can't afford one, the other nice thing about this Michigan Immigrant Rights Packet that I'll be leaving here is they have a list of different nonprofit and legal aid groups that deal specifically with immigration issues. So also, a couple other things not to... I guess I just kind of went over that. My apologies. The last thing not to do. Don't allow the law enforcement to search your premises, your car, unless they have a judicially signed warrant. And the key word there is judicial warrant. So in the immigration context, they are allowed to have what's called an administrative warrant, where it can be signed by essentially an immigration official that works for ICE. These don't give ICE officers the ability to go into your house and search unless you allow them to. So if they present you with a warrant, it's always best to check the actual signature, see if you can make out who's signing it, see if it's listed as a judge. And another thing you can look for is whether there's some sort of seal on it. a stamp of any kind that would indicate that it's coming from a court. And if you're not sure, that's another good sign to say, I need to call an attorney and assert your right to have an attorney present for any questioning. So, as I mentioned earlier, now I kind of like to go through, I think there's basically 3 scenarios that you're most likely to come into some sort of law enforcement contact. At your home, in a car, or just out in public walking around. And I kind of like to go through those 3 in order. But is a general disclaimer to any type of interaction you might have with law enforcement. If you're a legal permanent resident, meaning you have a green card or something similar to that, if you're over 18, it's always best to carry those documents on you and provide them upon request. Now let's talk about if some sort of law enforcement official comes to your home, whether it be immigration or local, or let's say you're not sure who they are. You can always ask, who do you work for? But things to know about at your house. If they come up to your door, do not open the door. You can ask them from the outside to slide any paperwork they have underneath. Likewise, if you're not confident talking to them, you can slide a card like this underneath that shows that you're asserting your rights, you're not trying to obstruct the process at all, but if they won't have any questions for you, you want an attorney there. So don't open the door, because there is some debate, from my understanding, in the immigration context of whether opening the door is you consenting to them coming in and talking. So you don't want to get mixed into any situation. You want it to be very clear that you're not allowing them to come into the house unless they have that proper judicial warrant where you're seeing a judge's signature or a seal from a court on it. And again, you can always slide your card asserting your rights underneath. Oh, yes, sir.
Does that apply to, say, somebody comes to this building here, same rule applies, that we don't let them enter?
Yeah, I would say it would, because if they're here searching for something, this is private property, you would have the same rights here. And likewise, if anyone's coming around asking about people's immigration status, no one is required to talk to law enforcement. You always have the right to remain silent. And again, the right to remain silent means be silent. Doesn't mean tell your best lie, tell what you think they might want to hear. That's where people really get into trouble with asserting their rights in front of law enforcement, is they tell, some kind of white lie that they think, is an innocent answer, but it ends up not being true to the situation, and then you can be jammed up for obstructing. So, and if you're not sure, say, they were to come here with paperwork, you'd say, I don't consent to your entry. Please allow me to contact an attorney to review any of the paperwork you have. And you want to be really clear on letting them know that you don't consent to any entry and that you won't open the door without a judicial warrant. And if they're still demanding to come in, that's a good time to call an attorney. Does that answer your question, sir? Yeah. Okay. So again, if they come to your doors, again, the best phrase you can say is, I don't consent to your entry, and I will not open the door without a judicial warrant. And again, that judicial warrant, you want to look at the signature line and see if there's a seal from a court. Now let's talk about cars. Now, I should say cars kind of come into 2 situations, because you have checkpoints at the border where a lot of what I'm going to say doesn't apply, because at the border they have immigration officials don't need any type of suspicion to ask about your immigration status because you're trying to come into the country. I'm thinking in this situation more, you're stopped driving around in the community. Now, as a driver in Michigan, you have to identify yourself with the driver's license, because you have to have a license to be on state roads. But if you're a passenger in a car, you don't have to identify yourself to an officer unless they have reasonable suspicion of some sort of criminal act. So if you're a passenger in a car, one thing you can do if an law enforcement officer is asking you to identify is you can ask them if you're free to leave. And if they say you're free to leave, that's when it's best to slowly walk away. You don't want to be running away where they can think that maybe by how quickly you're acting, you're doing something evasive or suspicious. And likewise, if they tell you you're not free to leave, at that point, you've made it clear for any attorney that may come in later that you asserted your right to go free, and this officer was detaining you. So if he doesn't have that reasonable suspicion, the proper legal threshold, that's going to be something the attorney can later challenge. And if an officer is telling you after you said, "Am I free to leave?" that you're not free to leave, at that point, it's probably best to ask for an attorney. So likewise, if you're in a car, you always have the right to refuse a search of the car. Now, just because you refused it or don't consent to it doesn't mean it will not happen. But what you've done by refusing it is you've preserved, because we're lucky in our community, all the law enforcement officers wear body camera, so there's going to be a recording almost certainly of you saying you don't allow this search, and then an attorney like me that gets this, if it's an illegal search, I'm going to see that my clients asserted their rights, and that's going to give me stronger standing to argue against any search that may have happened from that point forward. So I think at this point probably go to just public spaces. And public spaces are pretty similar to a car encounter, kind of like the passenger situation, because when you're out in public, you don't have any duty to identify yourself to law enforcement unless they have reasonable suspicion of a crime. And usually when you're walking around on the sidewalk, there's not going to be any sort of reasonable suspicion going on. So again, first question to ask, always good to ask, am I free to go? If the answer is yes, slowly walk away. If it's not, then that's a good time to ask for an attorney to be present for any questioning. And again, if you're not sure, because a lot of law enforcement now wears like modified uniforms where they might have a badge, but there's a sweatshirt and maybe like a pullover. If you're not sure who you're dealing with, you always have the right to ask, what agency do you represent? And it's a good idea for you, if you're in this encounter, to make note of who you're dealing with, and if you can get a badge number from the officer. But in public, like the passenger situation, it's really best to ask, am I free to go? And you don't have to answer questions about your immigration status. Now, if you have, permanent legal residence status, you do have to, show your card upon request, and you should definitely do that because that should de-escalate any situation. But if you're undocumented, something like that, or you're not sure where your status is, that's where it's best to remain silent, because anything you say to maybe try to ease the situation over, if it's kind of a fib, that's where you can get into trouble for obstructing, where if you just remain silent and say, I'd like to have an attorney present, you kind of maintain the status quo of the situation. And what I mean by that is whatever the law enforcement officer knew before that coming up to you, he's not going to learn anything else from the situation because you're not giving him any information, and you're giving yourself a chance for the attorney to get involved where that status quo, whatever the interaction was before they came up to you legally, stays the same, and the attorney is then in the best position possible to maximize and assert your rights. And I think at this point I'd open it up for questions. So, yes, sir?
So I think because the group you're talking to is generally believes you should be cooperative and stuff, right? So generally, if you have reason to believe there's nothing wrong you've done, they come searching for your car or they come to your house. Mm-hmm. Is it okay to sort of let them in, or or is there a risk in also doing that, just even if you're clean and there's nothing to worry about?
I think there is still some risk because you don't know what the law enforcement officer knows and what they're looking for. They may be looking not at you directly, and they may see something. There's a concept in the law that's called plain view, and that means if a law enforcement officer is somewhere they have the right to be, and if you give them the right to be there, if they see something in plain view that then connects up to a part of their investigation, you may not know what they're looking for. That's going to be legally allowed to come into court because the officer was where they were at the time they saw whatever might connect a dot. And sometimes innocent evidence can connect a piece of their investigation, and you wouldn't necessarily know that, like an officer may ask you where you were on such a date and time, and you're thinking, I don't know what he's asking for, but for them, that's significant because of whatever they're investigating. I know that's a little vague. I apologize.
Like I said, I think this group is someone who wants to be cooperative, and then I think it's a risk.
And a good way to start out any encounter with them is to say, officer, I'll listen to any lawful order you have, but I've talked to an attorney that said it's best to have a lawyer present for any questioning, so respectfully, I would like to have a lawyer present. But if you start off the encounter by saying, hey, I'll listen to any lawful order you had, but I've spoken with some lawyers that have told me it's best to assert my rights this way, I think it would be difficult, for any good faith, well-meaning officer, because, thankfully in our community we do have law enforcement officers that try to do things the right way. I think that would be viewed as a legitimate assertion of rights and not you trying to play games or be obstructive in any way. If you start off with, I'll listen to any lawful order, but attorneys have told me that it's best to have a lawyer present, so I want that. I don't think that would be something that would cause any sort of objection. And one thing to note, too, with dealing with police officers, not so much with our local law enforcement officers here, I don't see this tactic being used, but the law does protect police officers and their ability to lie to the public as an investigative tactic. So going back to your question earlier, that's why I still have some hesitation about saying, yes, it's okay to let them in if you don't think you have anything to hide, because they're allowed to, hide what they're really investigating and use deception in order to investigate it. Where you, as a member of the public, you can't lie to a law enforcement officer, because then you risk obstructing justice, where that's where it's best to just use that right to remain silent and do exactly what that means, remain silent. Yes, ma'am.
It's not only that just police officers, the concept of immunity to the government officials give them a lot of power to tell lies.
Yes.
And
yeah, qualified immunity is...
In my knowledge, and I may not have that, I have not seen that concept in any other country. In any other country's constitution, except in United States, and the concept of pre-bargaining. These two tools do affect us adversely.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a movement among defense lawyers to limit qualified immunity. So that's qualified immunity is the term for typically law enforcement officers when a lawsuit is brought against them for violating someone's constitutional rights. What the law will say is the officer is immune from any of those I shouldn't say prosecutions, but any of those lawsuits, unless there's been a previous case that is so similar to the situation that this lawsuit is about that the law enforcement officer would have known that they were violating your rights. And having that narrow view of, only in situations where there's a case that, previously looks just like yours, like you said, does have the effect of providing a lot of immunity in situations where it really, in my opinion, shouldn't be.
The people representing us in legislatures.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Blatant lies, and they go without it. If they were in any other country, they'll be taking us, aiding and abetting, and be in the court. Government documents are torn before the world, and nothing happens. And if a soldier takes a picture of a machine, he's given 10 years.
I understand and share your frustration. I'm hoping there's legal...
I can't do nothing about it.
And unfortunately, that's one of the situations where me as a lawyer, I interpret the law. I don't get to make it, but I do. If I was in charge of making the law, there would be some changes. That's for sure.
I have a
very
stupid, simple question.
Oh, I'm sure it's not stupid, but go ahead.
When you say, I need my lawyer present, do you have to call the lawyer right away? You have to have a lawyer, or how does it work? I don't think
we never used any lawyer, so what's the best?
Great question. So I'm going to leave two numbers of both the Michigan ACLU and the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, where I think one of those two numbers would be a good place to start if you didn't have a specific immigration lawyer that you're already working with. The reason I say that is the ACLU and the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, they work very closely with lots of legal aid where they do pro bono or lower service or lower fee type immigration representation. And I know if you were to call them, that they would certainly work to coordinate getting an attorney that could be there, that's present, that knows whatever area of law is particular to your immigration status. So
right at that time, even if it's late night or something, or it's how?
If it's late night and they can't come, unfortunately, it's awkward and it kind of goes against your human instincts. But it's best to just remain silent until the morning and tell them, I'm not answering any questions about this situation until a lawyer is present. And then there could be additional issues that would come up that would give your lawyer other, issues to fight about if they were unreasonably delaying getting you access to a phone to call your attorney. There is case law out there. It's very fact specific on what caused the delay, how long it was. But there are situations where if the government unreasonably delays getting you either the right to a phone call to attorney or obstructs your attorney actually getting into wherever you're at to talk with you, that constructively they've denied you the right to your attorney, and that's an argument your lawyer can make, that if they try to kind of give you the runaround too much, that we could, depending on the situations, potentially argue that they've denied you the right to an attorney, and then if there was anything adverse that happened after that, that would be a way to challenge that coming into court. Does that address your question?
Yeah, because so in continuation to that, like if say someone says that I won't call the attorney and all, and then like they get to the like physical handling or stuff like that. So what do you do in that case?
I'm sorry, I don't know if I understood the second part of your question,
so
sir.
if say I'm not answering and I'm staying silent, right? But if they get physical, right? Can they or use force? By force, they use force.
So
right? Because some of the cases we have seen is that, particularly like based on the YouTube videos on the ice and all, like they were
sure.
into it, right? So if like this looks like is in a normal scenario when the other side is like reasonable, right?
Right.
They will listen to it, right? And they won't go for the things which are not lawfully right, right? But if the other side is not, then what do you do in that case?
And why are their faces covered? Like, why do they cover their faces? You know, I mean, this is so.
That's been an argument.
In my opinion, the face covering is very anti-democratic. I'm equally as puzzled by that to you. But you raise a good point, because you're assuming good faith from the other side, and good faith, most law enforcement officers do operate under good faith, but obviously the media is full of situations where that's not the case, and as a criminal defense attorney I see that as well. I think if you get into a situation like that, it's always best to tell the officer, again, I'm just asserting my rights. I'm going to listen to any lawful order you have. Now, if they're not respecting it, hopefully you're in a spot where there's going to be a recording that should be preserving this. And likewise, they may have a duty to record it, and if they don't record it, then that becomes a legal challenge I can raise to say, hey, you're excluding evidence on my client that they have a right to, because you put this policy out here that this would be recorded. Likewise, I think it's always best not to fight back with officers. Now, in Michigan, you have a right to resist an unlawful arrest. I would never advise anybody to do it, because usually that just results in injuries and increasing the status. I think it's best to just say, sir, I am just asserting my rights. I'll listen to any lawful order. Can you please get my attorney here? And if they don't do that, never be afraid to ask to speak with a supervisor. Now, if they're bad faith actors, it may get you nowhere, but at least by not turning over any evidence, because by you speaking, a lot of times there's a gap in law enforcement cases, and they're hoping you're going to open their mouth to fill in whatever the gap is in their investigation, and by not opening your mouth, you're at least preserving the status quo. And if they've done anything like excessive force, that may be something additional that the attorney could then either proactively bring a lawsuit on your behalf for the violations of your rights, which then could be used to help whatever other situation, whether it be immigration, criminal, that you have going on. So I know it's not a perfect answer, but when you're dealing with bad faith actors, which again I think are the exception rather than the rule, there's no perfect solutions, because unfortunately the law is something that all of us have to preserve ourselves. It's a human-made construct. It does have real force, obviously, but it is a human product, and stare decisis, like my dad was talking about at the beginning, being the common law approach of interpreting law to be consistent with others is only as good as those interpreting the law and their good faith effort towards doing that.
Should I try recording it then? Like if I get it,
certainly.
With my phone,
certainly, yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Something is there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have a right to. Yeah, you have a right to record law enforcement officials. They may not like it. And again, that's where I think it's good to start off the interaction with, hey, I'll listen to any lawful order you have. But I've spoken with some attorneys, and they told me I should really have an attorney present for this questioning. And then if they escalate from there, you can always take the camera out because you have a First Amendment right to record officers. Sorry.
I sort of just have a comment that was really well articulated, because a lot of times the videos that make it to YouTube are just for views and they're not representative of what really happens on an everyday basis. So I would say yes, that's a possibility, but it's only a rare fraction of possibility where they get physical or they have reason to believe that this person might resist. So
yeah.
But many a times, like you are.
And I should say, sorry to cut you off. If you are in a situation where you're injured, always request medical attention so you can get it documented as soon as possible, so you can link that injury close in time to the misconduct. And I'm sorry to cut you off, sir. I just wanted to make that point.
So lot of time you just going out and you don't carry your document. Not always you carry your passport or visa or whatever, right? And somebody just come and randomly stop you, right? You are in just unnecessary situation because you just went to drop your son, your daughter, pick up, and right. You don't always carry everything here because you don't think like anything gonna happen, and maybe they may be coming for someone else and just unnecessarily like stopping you and start questioning you. Definitely we can say that, hey, I will be calm, cool, remain silent and all those things. But as she was also talking, like sometimes it is odd timings as well, like when you may not immediately have access to attorney as well.
Sure.
So will they be just taking us to the police station or somewhere like for the overnight, and what is going to happen like in those situations? Because we said we will be silent. They can say that, hey, we are detaining you or whatever, right? So I do not know how to handle those situations when we don't have access to an attorney.
So I think in the front end of that question, I think one thing to do is to compile all of your important documents into one area where it could be quickly accessed, where if you didn't have it on you, maybe you have a scanned copy on your phone, a picture of it, or if you don't have any of that, you have somebody that's at home that knows where you can access that information. So that way, even if you maybe forgot to have it, you've kind of talked through the family, you know where all the important documents are. And a lot of law enforcement officers, I obviously can't make promises for other, agencies, but I've seen it in my practice where if, like, say someone forgets a driver's license or something, they'll give them a chance to go get their documents. That's where I see it most commonly, because I don't do immigration specific.
So someone else from our family can bring the document, because they will anyway not let us go and bring anything at the time.
Or keep the picture in your phone.
That's what we keep, because sometimes they say, hey, I'm not even like, I don't follow what you are showing in my phone, right, by chance. Like I'm just trying to understand what situations which might happen, like unnecessary, like we are unnecessary, like being in trouble,
And what I would say too, if they're detaining you and you're not sure whether they have the cause to do it, that's, again, not a perfect situation to be in, but the best thing you can do is assert, say, I'm not answering any questions about this situation, or asserting your right to silence. I need to speak with an attorney. When can I get to a phone? And, I will list the two numbers for the ACLU and the Michigan Immigrant Rights Center.
And another question is like, let's say they take us to the police station or whatever, and then you mentioned that, hey, don't sign any document. But they may like put a lot of pressure on us, hey, this will happen, that will happen to you. Like, why not you sign this document? How to deal with that? Because let's say they have taken our phone and now we don't have access to our attorney. And a lot of time we may be in a situation wherein we think that, hey, sign and just get rid of it or whatever, right? So any worse situation, I'm just not thinking just the simple situations.
How practically it gets difficult.
Sometimes, like we are very calm, cool, we are not resisting to them, but sometimes things still happen because media shows so many things, and on the news also we have read something. Sometimes they take you, let's say they take you and they immediately deport you to, not deport you, displace you from Michigan to maybe Texas or somewhere else, you know, and your family doesn't know where you are.
So I know ICE does have, and I don't know how accurate it is, but I know they do have an online detainee locator. I think it's locator.ice.gov. That's one good thing to always be aware of. Your local jails here also have online searches where you can look up somebody, like specifically in Wayne County. You can look up Wayne County Jail inmate search, and you can find anybody that may be housed there. I know in Washtenaw you have to call to find out if anybody's there, but you can always call the local detention centers and explain that you're looking for somebody. Likewise, if you're on the other side, it's not perfect, but unless you're very, very confident that you understand that document, and even under those circumstances, I'd still advise talking to an attorney. I think it's best to tell them, hey, I'd be happy to sign it for you, but again, I've spoken with a lawyer, and they told me I really shouldn't do this, and I respect that lawyer's advice, so I respectfully, officer, would like to speak to an attorney. Can you please get me access to a phone?
Correct. Ultimately, request from an attorney. Right?
Yeah, and I know I sound like a broken record, but a lot of times...
That's a good input, because we didn't even think about that in our heads, right?
Yeah.
So that we can say is that, we will listen to you, we'll follow all the records, so as we can talk to the attorney, right?
And it's really a tough situation because, when you're dealing with law enforcement, you don't know what they know. So by making statements, it's really tough to know what might line up with something they're thinking, contradict it. And that's why, even though it sounds, it kind of goes against your human nature is to be social, talk to people, but to really create that barrier of getting an attorney involved, because once an attorney like myself or, somebody that's in the immigration world gets in, they're allowed to start asking questions, say, hey, why are you even approaching my client? What authority do you have? Can you give me the documentation that shows that authority? So that way, your attorney can start getting some information about why you're even coming into contact with them, and first, what they know, so that way you can plan your next actions with your attorney so that it's kind of in harmony with whatever information may already be out there on the law enforcement side, so you can preserve any defenses. So that's why I kind of keep coming back to that, ask for an attorney, because you don't know what they know, and getting the attorney involved will allow you to kind of create not a level playing field, but a more level playing field as far as the information that you're operating with when you're making decisions.
Yep. One more thing about the public places, I heard that now, in just few weeks back or so, they said they now started having a presence on the airports as well. Suddenly you are just traveling and they for no reason, hey, you are in our list. I do not know from where they get a list. You are in our list. Come on the side. Sometimes they do that, right? Mm-hmm. With the people, right? That's what we see in the
sure,
right. Everything I'm talking about because we see a lot of social media things and unnecessarily worried about some of the things happening for the time being.
Yeah.
So what again? Request for an attorney, right? That's it.
Yeah, and I think in a situation like in an airport as well, they can't detain you without reasonable suspicion for an unreasonable amount of time, which is a very vague standard. But again, if it starts to get very long where you feel like they're playing games with you, they're not letting you speak to an attorney, I think it's also appropriate to ask can I speak with your supervisor about why I'm not free to leave yet? Yeah. Or will you allow me to talk to an attorney so I can figure that out? And again, not answering any questions specific to the situation, just, am I free to leave? If not, why?
I'm sorry to ask more questions, but I'm just, because let's say somebody is displaced to Texas or within the country, it is maybe easier for an attorney to maybe show our documents, legal status, and whatever, our citizenship, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But somebody has been put to in a different country also. It has happened in the past. Yeah. But how you as an attorney can help people in such situations, Because it becomes very tough from the other country to bring them back,
Yeah. Right. And again, I'm not an immigration attorney, but my understanding from following some of those cases in the news that in a lot of those situations, attorneys, where it hasn't been always successful, but when an attorney gets involved, they can petition the court to bring the body back into the country or make the government state what is their basis for actually removing the person in the country, and then a judge can evaluate whether the basis is sufficient. And if it's not, I'm sure you've seen also there's been some cases, and there's obviously been debate about, whether that those orders have been followed, but judges have issued orders, hey, you need to bring this person back. And that's where an attorney can get involved to try and bring the judicial branch in to get the executive branch to follow the law.
Thank you.
I just wanted to give a helpful hint which happened to me one time.
Sure.
What we're talking about basically defensiveness before the law enforcement. When you're driving, sometimes you're stopped by a cop. So once you can have your driver license or can have your proof of paper. A lot of times the insurance paper you put in the glove box. So you want to open a glove box, you might have a gun too. You might have a gun and the cop may not know that. He can be alert. So I was told the smart thing is when you open your glove box, tell the cop, sir, I have the paper in my glove box. I want to open it before you. Please watch it. It's a defensive thing. He won't pull a gun on you, you know. It's kind of safety thing because these people, they got power on you. You are alone on the highway. You're a single man and the guy has a gun or whatever. He can fabricate, twist anything anyway, and you are on the defensive. So better to play safe, you know.
I think you being pulled over, having the hands visible is a good idea.
It is always better to ask before.
So when I'm reaching, I'm going to
Comparing that with letting the officer know, hey, I'll follow any law.
The officer does not know what you're going to do.
For sure.
What are you got in glove box? Just kind of.
And where I've seen situations escalate and get bad for my clients is often when people come forward asserting their rights in a very rude or aggressive way, where they're coming through dropping expletives. What are you doing? Get the F out of here. You don't have to do this. Can I see your manager? When you come across in that confrontation, it's not a perfect science, but I mean, officers are humans too. If you're respectful, say, hey, I'm going to listen to any lawful orders. I've been advised of this previously. I'd like to get those documents. They're in here. Is it okay if I reach over here, just like he was saying? That's the best way to handle it. In those situations, I haven't, and this is just to my experience, I haven't seen it escalate to where people are getting injured.
So while we're discussing extremes, is it a good idea to call 911 and get off there? Just if ICE is there and again, it's a...
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with calling 911 during it's a little different, but I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I actually had a client that wasn't sure about an officer one time and how he was proceeding. He called 911 from his car dealing with the officer, and the supervisor came on scene. I think it maybe annoyed the officer he is dealing with, but it ultimately resulted in a safe encounter for everybody.
Just a quick one is it good in the current situation to have at least tie up with their attorney like you?
That's why we're going to have your cards.
There it is.
Yes. I think that's what
that way we already have
Yes.
an action, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And even if it was some
tip off in five minutes, right?
And are you available 24/7?
I'm sorry?
Will you pick up the phone midnight, 1, 2? I mean, just a question, not just you,
Yeah,
but any attorney, right? Not just
I will if I notice it. I'm a pretty heavy sleeper. There's been times where the phone has rang and I picked it up in the middle of the night.
We'll call it in the morning, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There's been other times I've slept through.
But that's I think
And then I have a bunch of these Know Your Right cards over there. If anyone's interested in my business card in particular, I have those. Even though I'm not an immigration attorney, if anyone were to call me, I would certainly get involved. Keep that wall up, get the information we need to get you to somebody that can deal with whatever the specific immigration issue was.
Yeah.
You made it comfortable actually coming to the courts too. Hey,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for allowing us.
No, thank you.
Thank you. It was very informative.
Yes.
Thank you for
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
As a citizen, what documents should you carry with you